Let's take a look at the project anonymizer. So I have a Word file here. It's called witness statement, and it's got some people's names in it, email addresses, postal addresses. There's some dates in it here and there. There is some more people's names, credit card numbers, more dates. So things like that. So I'm just going to use this file as an example because it contains lots of data that I might want to hide. So I'll close that file, and I'm going to create a project with that file. So I'll start off, I take my witness statement and I'll just drop that into Studio like that. I'll create a new project. I'll just use my default settings. Don't want to put it there though. I want to put it, let's create it over here in this folder. So let's see how we do this, warts and all. And I'm going to call this my witness statement. I'm going to copy that because I changed the path. So there's my new folder. Next, and source language is English UK. Target language is German. File is good. No TMs, I'll leave that like that for the beginning, and I'll just finish there. So the warnings are because I haven't got a TM attached, it's just information really. And if I open up my file, we can see that I have all this information in here that I want to try to hide. So to hide it, the next step after you'd identified what it is, and the best way to do that is probably just to search through the document using regular expressions or something like that. I have done a video further on down when you look at SDLTM convert, which will explain a little bit more how to use these expressions to find information a lot better, and you can use the same techniques on an STL_XLIF file pretty easily. So I'm not going to cover that here. Rather, what I did was I created a rule file already, because the application projectAnonymizer allows you to import a number of rules that you've already got if you don't want to use the ones that are there, or if you don't want to edit them on the fly. And you can do that in an Excel file. It's pretty simple. You have the rules on the left hand side, and you can just give it a title, something like that, on the right hand side if it's important. You don't have to put anything in there, but I have done. So you can see I've got the two addresses, two people's names, then I've got some generic regular expressions that I created for this document. They're not necessarily the right expressions for everything, because it's really too difficult to try to do that. So these are specific to my document. This is why it's important to know a little bit about regular expressions so that you can create your own rules. And then I've just taken the names of all the people who were in that file, and I've added them in here as well. So I'm going to import those in a second. So if I come back to my document, I go to batch tasks, and I'm going to go down here to protect data. I click on the protect data, and this brings up a little wizard, and in here you can see I've got an explanation of how to use the rules here. But all I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to select all of these rules that are here by default, and these are just here to give you a head start. If you don't want them, delete them. They're probably not going to be that relevant for you. So I'm just going to delete all of mine. I highlight them and then press delete, I remove them, and I'm just going to import that rules file that I created, and that gives me my rules here in here already. If you wanted to get the file format right, you could export the rules you had in the first place, and then you'll get an Excel file in the right format. But it's pretty basic, as you saw, just two columns, the rules on the left and a name on the right. So I'm enabling each of these rules because I want them all to apply, and I'm going to encrypt them. If I didn't encrypt them, I'll show you what happens actually. If I didn't encrypt them, then when I finish it and I run through the rules here and open it up, you'll see this has tagged everything. If I make the tags bigger so we can see what's in them, you can see that the content is tagged, but I can still see it, so the content is in there. So encrypting it is actually going to remove the content so you can't even read it. It'll be totally pseudonymized. So to put that back, I'm going to go back to my batch tasks, unprotect the data, click on next, and just finish. open the file, all the tags should be gone again. There we go, and I'm back to where I was. This time I'm going to run the batch tasks, protect data, and I'm going to encrypt them so you can see what happens. So I'll go next. So I'll check all the encrypt boxes. You need to give it a password if you're going to do this, and you must remember the password, because if you don't remember it, you will not be able to unencrypt them or to remove the protection afterwards. So it's very important that you don't forget your passwords. You can use any password you like. I'm just going to use my name for this, so you can use anything. P-A-U-L, make sure I got that right, all lowercase, and I finish. And then when I open the file this time, you can see that this time you can't see any of the content that's in there because they've all been completely encrypted. So when you send the files out for translation, nobody is going to be able to read that data or add that information into the translation memory, which is the purpose of the exercise. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my project settings. I'm going to add a translation memory, and I'm going to add this little one I've got down here, just so that we can do a quick pre-translation on this. Batch tasks, pre-translate file. On next. It should all be 100% because I've cheated and done this before, but I'll put it down to 90 just to make sure. Click on that, close, and open the file up again. And now the file has been completely translated, and you can see I've got the same tags that are in the source are in the target, so it's all completely encrypted, and this is how I would get the file back. So once you've done that and you've received your file back, you as the project manager, after you're happy it's been reviewed and everything else, need to unprotect that data. So you go back to your batch tasks, unprotect data, click on next. You'll get a little message down here if there's an encryption key required and you haven't got an encryption key written in here that matches the one, so you'll know. That message doesn't disappear until the next time. I'll click on finish, but it should have unencrypted everything for me now. There we go. So this time you can see everything has been completely unencrypted, and I can now save my target file. It's important to note that you're going to have a few issues when you do this. The first one is that anything that would have been localized, for example dates, are no longer going to be localized because they were encrypted. You've hidden them in this case, so they're in English in a German target file. So this is not going to be suitable for the customer, because when you save the target file, it's still going to contain English language in there. So you really need to find all the dates that are in the file and now correct them, but correct them without the translation memory being activated. Actually, with dates it wouldn't matter too much, but in your translation memory. But seeing as we're trying to ensure there's no recognizable data in there at all, for this exercise we're going to change all the dates. So you'd have to find them, and the easiest way to do that is to use regular expressions again. In my little file I don't really have to do that, but I'm going to show you how I can use the same rules. So I can take that expression. I could have these stored somewhere actually. Wouldn't necessarily have to do this. And in my display filter, I can use regular expressions in the target, filter for the date, apply the filter, and now all I'm going to have is every segment which actually contains dates. So now I can go through them like this. I can press Control comma and get the localization, but don't confirm it to my TM because I don't want to add anything that I've put in there and specifically tried to hide. I don't want to add it into my TM. So this is a good example really of where in many ways it's a little mad, because the process you're going to have to go through to get a file corrected before you send it to the client is going to be quite a lot of work compared to how it was previously, because now you're having to do things that you would not have to do before. The same thing might apply to names. In addition to dates, it might apply to many things that you've hidden. In some languages, I believe, if you're translating into Greek, for example, in Greek very often they change the way telephone numbers are written. They change the way postcodes are written. They sometimes translate the names. So there could be a lot of work to do after you've anonymized that file before you give it to the customer, making sure you don't put it in your TM. But essentially that's the way it would work. It's very straightforward to use the application. It's less straightforward to clearly understand how you're going to use it and when you're going to use it. But have fun, and if you have any questions, post them into the blog or go to the SDL community. That's a good place to ask questions and you'll get some good answers in there.